Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome and thank you for joining the fourth installment of our Environmental Justice Speaker Series, Exploring Environmental Justice, Energy Justice in the Boston Area, hosted in partnership with Boston University Student Government, the Energy and Sustainability Club, the Boston University Medical Campus Climate Action Group, and the Institute for Sustainable Energy, or ISE. My name is Gabriela Bocio Santos, and I am the Engagement Manager for BU Sustainability. I want to give a shout out for an event that's happening this Friday. It's hosted by two of our partners, ISE and the Energy and Sustainability Club. You can see the details on the screen right now, and my colleagues will share it in the chat as well. My colleague Neha is going to launch a brief poll right now, which should show up on your screens momentarily. And this is so that we can better understand who is in the room with us today. Our guest today will be discussing energy justice challenges in the Boston area, projects they have worked on, and policies that can advance equity in the energy system. This session will be recorded, and the recording will be made available in the coming weeks with captions. We are using a Zoom feature today, which allows live auto-generated captions, and you can turn on these captions by clicking the CC button on your Zoom taskbar now if you need them. We ask that you please keep your microphones muted and your cameras off during the panel so that we can better hear our panelists. If you have any questions, please share them through the chat at any time. We will be collecting them and we will try to get to as many as we can during the Q&A portion. Our moderators, Melissa Middleman and Neha Chinwala, both students at BU, will be guiding our conversation today. Thank you all. Before I hand it off, I want to acknowledge a few things. Tomorrow we are celebrating Earth Day, which started over 50 years ago. The road has been long and there is still a lot of work left to do to make our communities sustainable and resilient and prevent the worst outcomes of climate change. Yesterday, we were witness to an historic moment in which a police officer, Derek Chauvin, was held accountable for the murder of George Floyd. While this conviction is a step in the right direction, we likewise have a lot of work left to do to achieve racial equity and justice. The conversation about environmental justice and racial equity is at the crossroads of many issues and topics, and it's something that universities and environmental and sustainability groups have historically not done a great job of addressing. In fact, environmental and sustainability groups have at times stood in direct opposition to and conflict with environmental justice and social justice organizations. All of this needs to change. There is no sustainable future if it isn't also just. Health, racism, classism, poverty, and climate change are all interrelated topics. The ways in which we address them need to be intersectional too. At its core, sustainability is about people. It's about the future that we want to build together and the kind of world that we want to live in. And if we are reimagining and rebuilding our communities, then justice and equity need to be at the center of that equation for all of our sakes. We at BU Sustainability are not experts on environmental justice, which is why we've invited practitioners and experts with on-the-ground experience with these issues. I want to thank them all for their time once again. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Melissa, who will introduce the panelists.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Middleman, and I am the incoming president of the Energy and Sustainability Club at Questrom, where I'm also pursuing a social impact MBA. Just taking a look at the survey results, it's great to see so many different members of the community, some who have been part of the Exploring Environmental Justice series, but some who have not, so welcome. I have the pleasure of introducing our panelists and kicking it off with some questions. And then I'll pass it off to Neha Chinwala to facilitate questions from the audience. So we're excited to spend the majority of our time on your questions. So definitely feel free to post them in the chat or send them directly to Neha. Before jumping in, I just want to say that as we look forward to celebrating Earth Day tomorrow, I'd encourage us all to think about who gets to enjoy clean air, land, and water. Energy justice, the topic of our conversation today, is really about equitable participation in the benefits of energy production and equitable distribution of its burdens. We're so thankful to have representatives from a variety of local organizations here with us today to share how they are tackling these challenges in our community. First, I'm excited to introduce Daniel Morales from Codman Square Neighborhood Development Corporation. an economic development agency serving the needs of Codman Square and South Dorchester. In his role as Environmental Justice Manager, he works on energy efficiency, climate justice, and green infrastructure initiatives that bring equitable and sustainable solutions to Dorchester residents. Next, we're grateful to have Aidan Smith joining us from the City of Boston's Environment Department, where he supports outreach, marketing, and educational efforts around the Community Choice Electricity Program. Aidan is an advocate for programs that advance energy democracy and energy justice, and has been building awareness around the issue of residential electric supply contracts, which we'd love to hear more about during the panel today. Last, we're thrilled to have Jen Stevenson Zepeda, the Associate Director at Climbable.org. In her role, she oversees all communications efforts, social media, and events, while leading all microgrid and clean energy accessibility projects. She is well-versed on the topic of community-led microgrids, the value of early stakeholder engagement, and the importance of partnerships rooted in energy democracy. So as you can see, we have a great lineup, and there are many impressive details about all three of our panelists that I didn't mention, so I'd encourage you to read more about them. I'm now going to hand it off to each of our panelists if you'd like to take a brief moment to tell us more about your organization and your specific role. And Danilo, let's start with you.
Thank you, Melissa. Happy Earth Day to everybody for tomorrow, and yeah, happy to be here. Danilo Morales with Codman Square Neighborhood Development Corporation in Dorchester. Most of my work is focused on residents and small businesses, working with them with energy efficiency, solar energy, and also working with green infrastructure. And we are also now running a national green infrastructure certification program, workforce development for men of color, especially, and also women of color in Dorchester. And also I do like a data analysis of the impacts of the benefits of eco services of trees, all the green infrastructure that we are doing, or the energy efficiency and solar energy. Also, I do data analysis on that.
Aidan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Aidan Smith. As Melissa said, I'm an outreach coordinator for the City of Boston's Environment Department, which is housed in the Office of Environment, Energy, and Open Space. I've been with the city for a little over a year, but right after graduating from college, I lived in Cambridge for 3 years. That was 10 years ago. So I'm very familiar with the area. It's definitely been an experience this last year doing outreach entirely virtually, essentially because of the pandemic, but we've learned a lot, and I'm happy to be here. So thank you.
I guess I'm up. So Jen here from Climbable. I'm the Associate Director, and we are a woman-run nonprofit. We're based out of Cambridge, and we see ourselves, our mission is to make climate science and clean energy understandable and thus actionable for anyone, with the idea that if people understand the material, they're more likely to be able to do something with it. And so in that vein, we see ourselves as technical translators. We work collaboratively with organizations, primarily in environmental justice neighborhoods, following a ground up approach. We work very collaboratively with a number of area nonprofits, and I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, thank you all. And I'd love to jump right in. So let's start with a question regarding where things currently stand in our community. What do you see as the current landscape for energy justice in Boston, and what are the biggest challenges? And related to that, would you point to Boston as a model, or are there significant obstacles to overcome? And Jen, let's go back to you.
Great. Let's see. This is an exciting time for Boston. I learned today about the appointment of Reverend Mariama White-Hammond to the Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Spaces for the City of Boston. I'm very excited to see that. We had our friend at Green Roots, Maria Belén Power, recently appointed to the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Committee. And of course, Northeastern's Professor Shalonda Bayer was recently appointed to the Department of Energy as the first ever Deputy Director of Energy Justice. So I think it's an exciting time for these issues. I would not necessarily point to Boston as a model. There's a lot of iniquity here, and it's really ingrained in a lot of systems. So we have a lot of work to do. But we're involved with a local project in Chinatown with a group called Run GJC. We're a collaborative group working on community microgrids that are focusing on clean energy and taking their lead from the community. And so we think that this is a really exciting project that kind of promotes energy justice.
Danilo, Aiden, anything to add with that?
I can add something. Yeah, a couple of things. I think that, of course, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. So I think that most of the residents that I work with and the small businesses also, they are low-income families and low-income neighborhoods. So I think that for them, it's very challenging times that they are having now to be able to do like a deep energy retrofits or maybe add solar energy. So I think that for them is challenging. In the work that I do, I work with, we have partners. So we work with All in Energy. They are our energy efficiency partner. And we work with Resonant Energy. They are our solar energy partner. So because of we work with them, we know that the companies, the ecosystems of companies doing the energy efficiency and solar energy work, because of the PPP programs that we have from the government. Most of the companies, they are doing well. I mean, because of this help, but the residents are not. So at the same time, I think that I feel like Jen was saying, there is very interesting times in different ways all at the same time, because for instance, it was last week or 2 weeks ago that the roadmap bill passed here in Massachusetts, S9. So that roadmap bill is going to be really good, but also it depends on the implementation of the bill, right? And we have another bills coming also at the same time. They're like a companion bills that are coming. So it depends on how we keep track, how we push these bills. But among other challenges, I think that we have access to capital in general for these low-income neighborhoods, and also lack of meaningful credit. There are a lot of people with, they don't have good credit scores, so they don't have access to credits for the, to buy solar panels or to do the deep energy retrofit work, and also systemic racism, historical disparities that keep perpetuating this, the same. So that is, and of course, climate change that we have. That is another layer that we have to consider especially in the design, because we are dealing with all houses, all buildings. So there is no design or incorporation of design and about climate change, adaptation or anything in the buildings, these old buildings. Right? So it is challenging. And I would say that energy efficiency, I mean, when we talk about energy justice, it's not only about bringing some savings. It is about also job creation, and so diversity within the workforce development, the workforce that we have in the energy sector is lacking. So that is also the economical models that we have. We have like the utility companies, they have stakeholders around up there. So as long as we keep using this model that is extracting money and just basing profits, it doesn't matter all the changes that we do in the ecosystem here. We have to change the economical models to bring big corporations to have cooperatives, to have other models that are more democratic, which are locally controlled, community controlled, and also we have to bring unions. I think that unions are connected with the workforce development, I mean, work in general, and if we want to diversify all the workforce, we have to bring unions and to work with the unions to use this as an opportunity to bring the change that we're looking for.
Yeah, I'll hop in here on this question of sort of the current state. There's a lot of different, obviously, elements to this. I would also add, in addition to, we're talking about energy justice and the kind of the distribution of benefits around a transition to renewable energy. And a big question there is procurement and, who's getting the contracts, what kind of businesses are winning these contracts and the work. And, one of the recent things that the city of Boston did was start this or engage with some groups on this disparity study around what groups are getting contracts with the city. And to put it mildly, the results are not great. In terms of minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses, being underutilized. And so that's a body of work that the city's really been focusing on, putting a lot more energy towards. And so there's a lot that could be said on that side of procurement. I think there's a lot of, so one of the programs that I work on, the Community Electricity Program, is this massive effort to essentially allow the city can now aggregate customers, electric customers, and procure electricity on their behalf. And so this really gives the city a new tool in the toolbox to achieve economic, environmental, and climate change goals. I will say Massachusetts was the first state to pass legislation that enabled these types of programs. And that was in 1997. But since then, there have been other states, California being one of the best examples, where other states have done very innovative things with these municipal aggregation programs. And Massachusetts, in some ways, has kind of fallen behind a little bit. And so while the city of Boston is very excited about launching this new program, the largest of its kind in New England, I think there are ways in which that could really evolve and grow, and that's exciting. But also, Massachusetts needs to kind of, as a state, keep up with the times. And the last thing I would say is one of the big energy injustices that I focus on is this question of contracts, residential electric contracts that residents sign. So for those of many of you on the call may have actually been approached by marketers who come and they offer you contracts for electricity. And this has been a major issue for the city of Boston and for the Massachusetts Attorney General. Actually, recently, the Attorney General put out another updated report on this issue, showing that $425 million has gone out of our communities over the last 5 years to these suppliers. So that's $425 million that could have been invested in other things. And I would, this is a very hard issue to tackle because it's diffuse. It's hard to reach people who are being targeted by these marketers and suppliers. This issue largely affects low-income, marginalized communities. We know that from the Attorney General's research. And this is a question of how do we get the information out to folks so that they can act on it? I think it comes down to energy is a very difficult topic to sort of wrap your head around. Energy bills are a hard thing because they're constantly fluctuating anyways, right? It's not like your normal bill where what you pay, you should be paying each month, right? Your bill changes with your consumption levels, and it's not always obvious. Are you getting, are you paying more than you should or less? And so it becomes a very difficult issue, and it's the type of thing though where some of the most affected households are paying upwards of $300 extra per year on electricity. And that might not sound like a lot, but when you think about it, it can be a lot for households. But it's the type of thing where it's just a little bit on your bill every month. And so that's an example of a marketplace that is not working, that's not serving folks well. And so that's been a big focus of our work. So I'll stop there, but.
Yeah, Aiden, I do want to stick with you because you raised some interesting points about, while we know that the harms of energy production and pollution disproportionately harm minority communities, do you feel that the benefits of renewable energy and alternative energy sources are proportionally or disproportionately shared? Do you feel like the upsides are shared? And maybe you can talk more about that as relates to the community choice program.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big goals of the program. So in designing, we're offering 3 different products for folks. And prior to the program launching, you really only had 2 choices. You had the choice of going with the local utility, Eversource, for your electricity, or signing one of these contracts, which I just spoke about it at some length as to how those usually work out for people, not well. And so, prior to the program, those are your 2 choices. Now the program comes along, it started in February. And so it's brand new. We offer 3 products, trying to give folks a choice as to whether they want to really save money on their bills, go for the cheapest option. We have an option to go for 100% renewable electricity content, which was not a choice that you would have with the utility Eversource. So that's a new choice for people who want to go above and beyond and can afford it. But our standard product, it is really trying to, that's the one that most people are on. And we also, I will say, just to give you a perspective, there's over 200,000 residents and businesses that are part of this program. So it's a massive program. And the thing we try to do with that default product is strike a balance between affordability and renewable energy. We give customers more renewable energy than they get with the utility, and we really try to keep the price affordable, so that so that it doesn't have to be this trade-off between affordability and renewable electricity. That's the idea. There's different ways in which the program is able to achieve this. And so I think the program, is a big step towards, the sharing the benefits of a transition to renewable energy. And then I would say that the other side of it is like I said, the procurement, which is huge. I think we see this at all levels of government. The federal government is talking about the same thing, right? Every single federal agency has to think about how their procurement practices are, advantaging certain groups and disadvantaging others, and trying to get the allocation correct, because that's been a major piece of the puzzle.
Danilo, I want to return to you because you made some very interesting points regarding stakeholders, regarding, the government, unions, businesses who can provide access to capital and credit. What do you see as the role of government, local businesses, other community stakeholders in solving energy justice issues? And who do you think is best equipped, and who should really be involved? And then maybe Jen, you can talk more about that with regards to Climatable's task of communicating these issues more kind of accessibly.
Sure. So I think that each one of them, I think that they have a role to play, and each one of them, they have different roles. But I think that the role of the government, for instance, should be facilitating or creating a space where all the stakeholders come together to design policies. But the design of the policy should be including all the people, including small businesses, including residents from the communities that we are talking about, right? So all these people coming and helping to design the policies, because there are some policies that we have made in the past that they are coming from the top to the bottom. So I think that it should be more bottom up, and then also. But also, so that is the piece of the design of the policies, right? But also, after you do the design, it should be an implementation of these policies with the same stakeholders and also including all these small businesses, all these residents, to potentially become even investors in energy generation or distribution, or in any in any way that you can create an enterprise. So you just don't leave it in the design, but also you go with the same people, stakeholders, to the implementation, and then the tracking of these, right? So I think that of the policies and all of that. So, but I think that all of us, we have a different role, but we have to change, like I was saying before, the models and the way that we have been designing the policies, because we have gave utility companies monopolistic powers, right? But that happened 100 years ago, when the landscape of this country was totally different. The technologies that we had in that time was totally different. It was totally different, right? So I think that now we have new technologies. We have seen what happened with the different policies that we have passed over the years. So we can change these and to bring new models that are more democratic, and people can control and own these from the communities.
I can jump in here. Just want to echo everything Danilo said. Like, yeah, right on. I think the government has the bulk of the power, the bulk of the money, but they're there because we put them there. And so I would love to see more listening to the community happening just generally. You know, Climate operates under the assumption that the community knows best what it needs. So practicing listening is an important skill, and familiarizing yourself with what are the community's wants, needs, goals. How do we incorporate that? How do we get policy to reflect that? And then to address injustices, how do we center resources and benefits so that they do go to the people who are traditionally left out of the conversation? And the way we've worked within our microgrid project is by bringing groups from let's see, we work with the Chinese Progressive Association and the Chinatown Community Land Trust in Chinatown on our microgrid project. They are the anchor groups for this project. They call the shots. We help them design something that best fits their needs. And so I would love to see more of that model of bringing people, stakeholders from the community to the table to have these conversations, because they know what they want and need. It just needs people to help them get to the finish line, and for the government to help.
Well, in the spirit of having conversations, I'm going to keep it going and hand it over to Neha to see if there's questions from the audience.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight, and happy early Earth Day. My name is Neha, and I'm an undergraduate student at BU studying Earth and Environmental Sciences. I'm also an intern with BU Sustainability and the Director of Environmental Affairs for Student Government. So if you have more questions for the panelists, please feel free to send them in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can. And the first audience question actually kind of goes back to what you were just talking about, Jen, but someone was wondering, what are the best ways we can advocate for microgrids? And can you also explain what a microgrid is for anyone who might not be familiar?
I don't think we have enough time. So like at a super high level, a microgrid is traditionally a group of electric loads that are interconnected and have their own source of generation. That's one piece of the puzzle. And the other piece of the puzzle is that they have the ability to island and disconnect from the regular grid and use their on-site generation to power themselves in the event of a power outage. That's like the 15-second definition I would jump to. How do we advocate for them? That's a great question. But I would love to hear what my fellow panelists have to say about that. Yeah, I'll pause there just because I'm not really sure what the best way to advocate for them is, other than to express interest to your representatives and push for clean energy policy in general. If people have questions about our Chinatown project or our Chelsea project, I'd be happy to speak to them and they can get in touch with me.
Danilo, Aiden, do you have anything to add?
I would
Otherwise, we
add
can
that
move on.
maybe one way to advocate this would be from the resilience standpoint, because I think that, after the hurricane in Puerto Rico, or other places that that suffer like a devastation, natural disasters, we have seen microgrids are really resilient and they can kind of rebound fast, or you can have these interdependent kind of off the grid, kind of like systems that where you can generate or create energy for hospitals, just for the hospital, or just for, like vital services that you have to offer. So I think that maybe from the resilience standpoint, I think that I see that we can advocate and promote that, because that would be the best that we can have to react to any natural disaster or pandemic or anything like now we had.
Yes, thank you so much for adding that. We'll move on to the next question. This one's actually for Aiden. Someone asked, how do you best overcome or address the distrust of government and energy companies in your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not easy. I mean, I am probably the primary contact between the city of Boston's community choice electricity program and constituents. And I've had a lot of conversations where people, don't necessarily agree with the program. I try to, and I think it's about listening and understanding where they're coming from. There's a long history, there that I'm not going to undo in a single conversation. But it's important to, just hear them out, let them say what they want to say, and to. The way I come at it, I've had many conversations the last, 20, 30 minutes on the phone with somebody explaining to them, and the reason I like that is because I do see programs like the one I'm working on as having a larger kind of political project, larger social project in terms of energy democracy. So I connect with them in that way. And so, I think it takes time, right? What we know about the program is it's what now, a few months old. It's going to need to build a track record. It's going to need to show real results. And we are going to do our best to be transparent about like how it's performing, what is it doing for people. And so I think through that process, if we strongly believe these programs work, and this is going to be a success, and we're going to communicate that success to folks. And that way, hopefully, show them that government can be effective, right? And I think we're already starting to show that with the program. So and then in terms of just kind of speaking more to the outreach and building that trust, we've worked really hard with the program to make sure that we are getting materials out in multiple languages. I led 11 webinars in 11 languages in December, making sure everything's translated, making sure that people are getting materials ahead of time so they don't feel blindsided by the process. So it's all these, you just have to be really intentional about your outreach, and that way that can do some of the work of maybe diffusing the trust, the distrust, and things like that. So.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer, Aiden. The next question anyone can take, it is, are there any connections between waste production and energy justice, specifically in the Boston area? For example, are anaerobic digesters and other systems that break down sewage or waste into energy beneficial or harmful to the environment and the community?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, sure. So are there any connections between waste production and energy justice? So for example, anaerobic digesters or other systems that break down waste into energy, are those good or bad for the environment and the communities surrounding it?
I think composting is really good. I think if you're able to get into an anaerobic digester, that's even better. If you're able to get the anaerobic digester, harvest the methane from that and replace that instead of like natural gas, you're doing a lot better. I mean, I fully recognize that the biofuels aren't emissions free, but they're better than, you know, they might be a better power source than a diesel generator. So that's kind of how I think about them.
I mean, I don't know too much, but I know there is this cooperative. It's called here in Boston. It's called Zero Co-op, and I'm just posting there in the chat. So they do composting. Is a multiracial, like a worker-owned cooperative. So they would do work with compost. So I think that this connection between with the environmental justice and social justice. And the model is different. So, but I think that is the only example that I know here in the Boston area.
Okay, thank you so much. Danilo, I'm going to throw it back to you. And anyone can answer this after him. Someone was wondering, how can we, so we've talked a little bit about how the benefits of renewable energy aren't accessible to everyone right now. So we were wondering, what are some of the ways that we can make renewable energy and the benefits of it more accessible to everyone, whether that's specific programs that you're working on or different campaigns from your organization?
I think that, like I said in the beginning, maybe access to capital is one of the challenges. And I think that what we are hoping to do is help people to improve the credit score, or maybe they can use a different system to measure the credit score, like using the rent to do that. They pay the rent that they do every month. So trying to give them access to credit to capital. That is something that we are trying to do, and we are kind of campaigning to do. But also, of course, I mean, without the help of the government, the solar loan program that they used to be in Massachusetts is not available anymore, expiring last December. And without that loan, I think that it would be very hard for low-income families to access to solar energy or any kind of energy justice or equity. And so I think that we need more green banking, green loans, green bonds in general, but there are not too many tools out there. Like I would say before, there are this roadmap bill that just passed. So I think that it depends on how we can influence that. We can do something like bring back the Massachusetts solar loan, or we can enhance that and we can create new tools. But I think that now is very challenging for low-income families to access to solar energy or energy efficiency.
Something to add to this. So as Danilo said, you know, I totally agree. A little while ago, you were talking about how the city and, you know, government can kind of be a convener of parties. And that's, you know, I think that's definitely how the city sees its role. I'd also say something I've learned in the last year, I've just seen a lot of examples of the city also being an aggregator of resources. And so there's so many different programs and resources, and part of the trick is just to make it really easy for people to find everything in one place and to, you know, so one of the examples, some of my colleagues are working on this building performance standard, which is essentially a building performance standard is a standard you set that, you know, for to get carbon emissions reduced in buildings. And through this process of developing the standard, my colleagues worked with Community Advisory Board. And one of the things that came out of that was this realization that, hey, in designing this policy, we have been developing this resource hub for building property owners. But then, community members said, hey, we would really love a part of this hub to also be a place where we can find resources to, also reduce our own emissions in our homes and businesses. And so that's now become part of, what this is eventually going to look like. And so I think that is, how we're collecting the information is huge because again, people are busy. You need to make it as easy as possible. And so aggregating resources in that way is a big help. And then, the other thing I'll just touch upon is workforce development is huge because, we can set all these targets about, all the renewable energy we want to create, but we also need the workforce there that's going to be ready to actually, build this future. And so, it's been really heartening to see, I think recently the new mayor, Janney, had proposed in the budget, $1 million for the environment department to do green workforce development. I know other departments also have some money that is going towards the same kind of work. And so that's huge. That's really kind of putting money into areas of training and getting people ready to build the renewable energy future. So.
Thank you, Aiden. Dan, do you have something to add?
I just wanted to shout out an organization that Danilo already mentioned, All in Energy. They do work, outreach work to help. Please let me know if my video quality is okay. It just started pouring in like thunder and lightning. But they work to connect communities or homeowners or renters with the incentives that Mass Save. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear that or see that. But sorry. So I don't think that the utilities are doing enough outreach to let people know about how they can take advantage of the different incentives that there are within some of these programs that exist. And I think they have pretty poor penetration in low-income communities. And so I think there's a language accessibility component there. Maybe the materials are in English, but the people aren't paired with service providers who actually speak their language. There's improvements that we can make in that arena.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Jen. And I also have the lightning here, so understanding the problems there. And Danilo, thank you for adding those links in the chat. So I guess the next question, we have a lot of students here today and a lot of interest in going into renewable energy as a field after they graduate. So someone asked, what is your advice to current college students who want to go into the renewable energy industry to make sure they are centering justice in their work? Danilo, do you have any thoughts? You can think for a second.
I think that for me, I would say that like at least two pieces is one is the business side is what kind of models we're using, what kind of business models we're using or we have been using for the past 100 years or something like that. And then where we are using these business models, and then what other models we can use to bring more participation, inclusion, and distribution of wealth or distribution of profits. But in order to do that, to understand the models, you have to understand the side of the environmental justice side at the same time. So because if you want to create models, business models, new business models, you have to understand what is happening in the front lines with environmental justice communities, especially because they have been suffering the most, since 60, 70 years ago, since redlining started and all of that. So I think that understanding the history of redlining, environmental justice, the civil rights movement, all the victories and all the efforts done by these past movements and generations, I think that it's important to see that and to keep track of the policies that each one of these movements were able to push or to pass or not to pass, or who pushed back to that. So basically understanding the business models, the history of economic distribution, social justice, environmental justice, in order to take good decisions, and came up with new models that are more fair, just for everybody.
Can I add something too? Sorry, I've calmed down from the lightning. I just wanted to say, for folks who are looking to get into this industry or any industry, I would just encourage people to consistently look around the table and see who's there, and take note of who's not there, and then try to brainstorm ways to bring those people to the table. And if that means, challenge, like, I think there's a way to do it respectfully, right, with your supervisors, but speaking up if you're seeing people falling down on the job, so to speak. So I think if a lot more people did that, we'd be in a better position.
Yeah, I'll also add that, this kind of goes part and parcel with what Jen is saying and Neil is saying. It's just about, you need to do the work of understanding the barriers. And so, Daniil, you outlined many of the barriers that one might come across, right? In terms of actually, being getting to participate in this transition. And I've been, one of the things I learned, for example, like some things are not complicated, right? It's like, oh, it's hard to have someone come in and do, energy efficiency work in your home if that requires that you take off a few days from work to have that work done in your house, right? That's not, some people can do that, some people can't. And so it's like, it's only through like conversations that you actually maybe dig into some of those types of barriers that you maybe would not have thought about. And that's just an example. And the other piece I would say is, like, for me, as someone who studied energy justice in grad school, ownership was always really a big piece of it to me. Both ownership in the process and decision-making power, but also ownership of the end. I love sort of cooperative, developing cooperatives, new economy type work, where it really is starting to, you're not really talking about renewable energy, but you're also talking about a more structural shift in who owns the resources and the assets. And that's, I think, that's a place where I get really excited about. Anyways.
Can I jump in right there, just because, we're talking about like energy justice, but I do see this community participation and ownership as what we should be striving for. And I just wanted to say that is one of the key goals of our microgrid projects in Chinatown and Chelsea is actually our team in Chinatown is creating a cooperative where they own these solar panels, they own the batteries, they own the infrastructure, and they make choices about where to expand, how the benefits flow, and they make all those choices democratically. And for me, that's transformative. And it's exciting to be there, because we really need some rapid change in the energy industry, and giving people literal and figurative power is a way to change status quo.
All great pieces of advice. Thank you so much. And I'm wondering, going off of that, if you all see community solar as part of the solution, and if any of that work is happening in Boston right now.
I think that community solar, I think that is something that is a step in the right direction, but I think that maybe there are some different flavors of community solar. So I think that going back about what Aidan was saying, I think that the goal for me should be, like Jen was saying too, is the ownership piece, and a job creation. So I think that so if we are trying to give access to people who don't have access to credit or something like that, community solar will give them only savings for the consumption of the electricity, but they are not gaining. They will get some oxygen, something. It will be good for them, but we are not helping them to move forward or in a very substantive way if they don't own the community solar project, right? If they own the community solar project, that is good for them, for anyone involved in that project. But that means that maybe they have access to the credit, or they have more access to capital in general. So, but is the right, we're going in the right direction with that, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Aidan or Jen, do you have anything to add on community solar? Okay.
I think
go ahead.
Camilo covered it. No, I think he got. I mean, yeah, it's a strategy, you know, among many strategies, and I think, yeah, I don't want to take too much airtime talking about it. I think he covered it pretty well.
I agree. Okay, well, I guess I'll bring us to our closing question. So often when discussing energy justice, we find ourselves pointing to the challenges we need to overcome. But where do you see hope in this field and in your work for the future of energy justice?
I can start. I'm going back to like what I was mentioning at the beginning. These recent appointments of these impressive women are, for me, give me hope. Mm-hmm. The fact that the Biden infrastructure plan includes a lot in terms of renewable energy gives me hope. And my understanding is that it's his administration's policy that 40% of the benefits of flow to disadvantaged communities. I feel like that starts to get to addressing some of the injustices. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to become of all these, but I think we're trending in the right direction. And for me, that's hopeful. And also just seeing, you know, people more engaged politically, like groups like the Sunrise Movement and raising awareness like that from the youth is huge.
Yeah, I was going to say that what Jen just said is, I think that it was in 2016, 17 when the Sunrise Movement started, and I was kind of feeling depressed with the Donald Trump election coming to power. And when I saw this, you know, like a movement coming, young people getting engaged and participating, very active and influencing policy, that gives me hope to me, right? And going back again about what Jane mentioned it before, is it gives me hope all these new appointees at the local level and also at the national level, like Shalonda or Deb Haaland and all these women who are coming to occupy these positions. And also when I see, in the same vein, kind of, when I see all these women running for office in Boston, people of color more running for office in Boston. So I think that this kind of, this gives me hope. And at the same time, I think that Melissa mentioned it in the beginning, or Gabriela, about what happened in Minnesota. So I think that then when you see, you know, the jury coming with this, you know, found this person guilty, this gives me hope. Is like, yeah, we can deliver justice. We can deliver in a good way of what everybody saw is like, and we can deliver that justice. So we can maybe deliver the same kind of justice for energy, for water, and all these that we want here. So this, and maybe the last thing that I could say is working with All in Energy and Resonant Energy over the last 3 or 4 years also gives me hope, because when we have partners, we have providers and all the people that we work in one way or another with us. Or when we hire someone, we ask people to include, include diversity into the staff and to make it more diverse, more women and all of that. So working with them and seeing how the staff is coming more multiracial, multilingual staff, and diverse in general gives me hope that all this new generation of entrepreneurs, they can see the value of all of this, and they are doing the change and executing the change before our eyes. It took them a little bit to kind of adjust and find the right people, but they are doing that here in our communities.
I see hope in a few different places. Obviously, the Reverend Mariama Whitehammond becoming the chief of my department is very exciting. We're all very excited about that. She's been a fierce advocate for climate and environmental justice. Is a very compelling leader. I also feel, and this is just my sense, that there's been this refocusing on structural issues, which is great to see. I see more kind of connections and linkages being made between climate change and housing and public health, and so I think we're as a result of that, thinking of solutions that are going to be more robust, and along with that, I do want to kind of finish by saying that one of the structural changes that I feel, the reason I took the job of the city of Boston was because I feel very strongly about the program I work on, the Community Choice Electricity Program, because it's so significant in that it basically creates a new relationship between the city and its residents, right? Suddenly the city is able to, through electric bills and through energy, have this touchstone, which is going to, I hope, evolve and grow into something that really is, beyond what it is now. It allows, we're going to be able to gather data about how people are doing in terms of their energy justice issues. We've talked about at different times, like energy efficiency, where the energy efficiency dollars going. Like we'll be able to maybe better know who is using more energy than they than their neighbors. Can we target resources to people who need them? And so there's all these great ideas. So I want to speak a little bit to that very structural change that is this program, and that's why I think that's these structural issues and changes are slow, but when they do happen, they're significant.
Yes, thank you all for touching on those points of hope. It's a great way to end the panel in a more positive note. And I'll just pass it back over to Gabriela to close us out. But thank you all.
Echoing Neha here, thank you to all of our panelists and our moderators. This was a fantastic conversation. Thank you to everyone who joined us today in the audience. I'm sharing another very brief poll. Any information that you can give us is going to help us with future events. And just to close out, I'm going to share a couple of resources on your screen right now. So here are some ways that you can connect with our speakers. We are going to be sharing these slides afterwards. So this session was recorded, and we will share the recording and the slides with everyone who registered for the event. and include links that were shared in the chat as well. So you can try to screen grab this now, or you can, receive it via email later. There's also some further reading links if you want to read more about environmental justice. And finally, here's some contact information for the various different partners that we had in planning this event. So thank you once again to everybody for joining us today. We hope that this was a conversation that was of interest and that you continue to stay engaged with environmental justice in all of its forms. So I'm going to end the poll now, and thank you everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Earth Day.